Okay, I'm going to be looking at drama and acting, and I'm going to be looking at primarily universities, but I'm going to talk about drama schools as well. I'll answer this question now because it's a question a lot of people ask me after the talk, so I'll answer it. They say to me, are we better going to drama school or are we better going to university? And my answer is, I think if you want to do acting, the ideal route is, if you can do it, is to do both. So to do a degree in drama or theatre studies or performance, and then to do a one-year postgraduate diploma. That's the best way of doing it, and it might actually be, these days, the cheapest way of doing it. But what it means is that you've got a degree as rather than just a narrow qualification in acting. If, on the other hand, you said to me, if I can't act, then I'm not going to do anything, then I'd say, then probably go down the drama school route. But I think if you can do both, if you're capable of getting a degree, it's going to be so important in the future to have a degree, to get almost any job, that it's worth having both. Okay, a little bit about the structure. Most of these degrees are 3 years and full-time. There are exceptions where people do drama part-time, but if you imagine, there's a lot of creative practice involved in this, and it's difficult if you're doing that on a kind of part-time basis. Anybody thinking of doing drama or performance with a European language or a... Right, okay. You're looking at 4 years. What language are you looking at doing with? Spanish. So if you came to us, you'd do your first year in Aberystwyth, you do your second year, and your third year you would go to Mexico, Central America, or Spain, depending on which was, and then you'd come back and you'd complete your degree. The same would be true of French, Italian, and again, some universities you can do things like, Oriental languages, Chinese, Japanese, that sort of thing. The same thing would be true there. Anybody looking at doing a higher national diploma? No, good. Good decision. Okay. All of the courses that we're looking at here today, the university courses that we're looking at here today, involve a balance of what is called critical and creative practice. Now, in the past, you might have heard people talk about practical and academic. And I think universities are moving further and further away from this notion of academic and practical, because that implies that the creative practice that you do, the acting, the directing, the design, the filmmaking, the dance, all that, it kind of implies that it's not academic. If you're doing the right kind of thing, and if you're approaching it in the right way, it is academically just as valid. So what they tend to talk about now is creative practice, the making of theatre, performance, film, and so on, and the critical practice, which is the analysis of relevant elements. And of course, depending on what it is you're interested in, they may be different things. So for example, it might be critical practice in relation to practitioners or the work of practitioners, or it might be, and we'll look at this, it might be more thematic, okay? The best courses demonstrate the relationship between the critical modules and the creative modules. And I'll give you an example from my own degree scheme, which I think illustrates it. We do a module in our first year, which is called Text Workshop, okay? Now, have any of you here ever read a play and thought, I have no idea what this is about? I really don't or chunks of it, you think, I really don't understand this. And not only don't I understand it, but I wouldn't know how to turn it into a real piece of performance on stage, even if I did understand it. Well, we appreciate that a lot of students can struggle with texts. Sometimes they're contemporary texts and sometimes they're historical texts. So what we do is we have this text workshop, and this is not just us, other universities do this as well, where instead of having it in a room like this is a kind of very formal kind of lecture space, it's in a rehearsal room or it's in one of our performance spaces. And what happens is the students sit there and we go through these difficult texts and we look at the historical context in which it was written, the social context, who was writing it, why were they writing it, who were they writing it for, how might it have been received. So you start to see immediately why it's been written in the way it has. And then we equip you with a set of tools to deconstruct that text. Now, it's no good just understanding that text. What's important is that the module teaches you how to apply that to a whole range of texts that you might encounter. So over a period of weeks, you'll do that with a range of texts. But it doesn't stop at the point at which we've kind of gone through line by line and word by word, and you've understood it. The next thing we might say is, right, how would you direct it? And you say, well, I'd direct it like this, I'd do it. And he'd go, no, you don't do it like that. You do it like this. And then he'd go, no, he's wrong and she's right. So what would happen then is we actually get the students to get up off their backsides and actually try those ideas out, try different ideas of staging the particular text that they've dealt with. And of course, in the process, what you start to realize is actually the ability to analyze a text is as valuable to you as an actor, a director, a designer, as learning the acting techniques, the acting skills, because it helps you to find a way into the text. So what you're looking for is where that kind of relationship between the critical and the creative is properly articulated. Okay, coming back to universities now, programs vary considerably, even where they have the same name. But most of them will have a good balance between the creative and the critical work. But do look carefully. And sometimes you will find tends to be a correlation. Those universities which have the highest entry requirements may put a greater emphasis on the critical practice rather than the creative practice, and vice versa. And I think what you should be looking for is ideally is a good balance between the two, or choose one because you say, I am more interested in the critical practice, or I am more interested in the creative practice. So you need to establish, when you go on the UCAS website and through other questioning and visiting the institution, what is the actual balance between those? And the ideal one for me would be one which was sort of a 50-50 split between the two. Again, as we said earlier, what's the relationship between those two? And how is your practical work assessed? And I mentioned this back at the beginning, the importance of assessment. So for example, do you do your performance work and then you then have to write it up, and it's on the writing up that you get your assessment. Now, I'm pleased to say increasingly those kinds of assessments are disappearing. Increasingly what will happen is that people may look at the performance. In fact, I've got a list of things here of things that they may actually use. Is it through written work? Does somebody look at the final product, go in and say, that's worth a 2-1, that's worth a first, that's worth a 2-2? Do they look at the process? Do they look at, well, what's this person learned during the process of rehearsal and preparation for the performance? Is it through both? And again, in an ideal world, I would say it should be both. Increasingly, universities have put a lot of emphasis on getting the assessment criteria absolutely right. Because you can imagine it's a situation where I might go in and see you acting and I'll go, God, he was awful. And somebody else will go, no, he's brilliant, he was fantastic. So how do we measure that? And what other kind of things? There might be a portfolio, you might produce a notebook. And increasingly, and this is something we put a lot of emphasis on, what is called reflection on practice. Imagine for the moment, if you can, and because you're all good actors, you can do this, imagine that you're a physics student, okay? So you're not the most, oh sorry, no, be careful, I'm being filmed, aren't I? Okay, you're a physics student, okay? You do your physics exam and you make some mistakes in your physics paper. Right? You get it wrong, you don't get the marks, that's it, finished. In the context of drama, with reflection on practice, you may have done a good performance, but you will have learnt an awful lot. In the reflection on practice, what you can do is you can feed back in an oral exam at the end of the process, these were the things I learned, this is where I felt I developed. These were things which I think I didn't do especially well, but I recognise that I didn't do them very well, and I know how I would do them better. And what this enables you to do, in a sense, is to learn from your mistakes. That means you get credit for what you've learned through getting something wrong, but acknowledging and recognising you've got it wrong. So look for those kind of things, because it is a way of earning extra credit. Okay, practical facilities, very important when you're looking at universities. If you want to do dance, if you want to do musical theatre, if you want to do straight acting, if you want to do film, television, are there good practical facilities there? So, are there good dance rooms with good sprung floors, mirrors, bars, that kind of thing? Are there plenty of rehearsal rooms, okay? So what kind of access does the department or school have to those? And you might think, well, that seems like a strange question. Well, you will see universities which say, our students will perform in such and such a theatre in the town, and you think, oh, that's brilliant. It's got an international reputation, fantastic. But actually, will you be there every week? The answer is probably not. You might be there for a few days when you're doing a performance. So what other facilities are there? Because any theatre that has a professional programme is going to find it difficult to fit student work in there, and you're not going to necessarily get the time that you want. So ask those questions. What kind of access do we have to these facilities? Do we have rehearsal rooms that we can use? For example, our students, we do a lot of production work, but students like to do work outside of the departmental work, and you probably all will. You'll all probably get there and you say, I want to do cabaret, or I want to do this kind of work, or whatever it is. Can you use the rehearsal rooms? Can you use the stage space if it's not being used for your own work? That's important. So what kind of access do you have? what kind of technical design and other support facilities exist? And you might go, well, look, I'm interested in acting, you know. I'm interested in directing. I don't care about lighting or sound or set or costume. But if you think about it, if you're standing on stage and your costume falls apart, or the scenery falls on you, or you're standing here and it's beautifully lit over there and it's a blackout here, you know, none of those other people are actually on, you're the one who's there. So actually it is very important that there are good technical facilities. And very often where universities offer courses not just in acting and directing, but also in the design and technical side, it means that you're working with a group of other students who are just as, for whom the performance and the technical perfection of that performance are just as important. So again, look for that kind of relationship. Just a little bit more about the differences between studying at university and at school and college. Much greater emphasis on personal research and study. And what you'll find that throughout the degrees is that more and more the staff become hands-off. And that's not because we're lazy. It's because what we know is that at the end of your degree, you're going out there into the real world and you need to have the confidence to stand on your own 2 feet. So for example, in my own department, the production work, the performance work that you do in your the end of your 3rd year is not staff-led. It's staff-supervised, but it's not staff-led, so that you know you have the confidence to be able to create your own work, to produce it and to present it. Because when you go out there in the real world, we're not going to be there holding your hand. So we need to know that you've got that independence. So, you know, it's more and more emphasis being put on you. Much more emphasis on self-motivation and self-direction. That, you know, for example, when you get to university, nobody's going to say, you know, you must be in by 12 o'clock, you have to be up at 9 o'clock in the morning, you can sleep all day, but obviously that's not going to help you very much. So you have to be able to motivate yourself. That's quite important. More emphasis on developing your analytical and your critical skills. You know, problem solving is going to be the most valuable thing you can do in the future, because a lot of the lower cognitive skills and all the manual skills are now done by robots and computers. It's the problem solving that people are going to need in the future. So that's what you need to kind of emphasize. You might be taught via lectures, seminars, tutorials, workshops, a whole range of different ways of learning. And what you need to find is what's the way of learning and what's the way of assessment that suits you, okay? Very quickly then, skills. I mean, again, skills and careers. You'll get a whole range of different skills at university, but the most important skills you'll get will be the transferable skills. And you're probably already familiar with these, but in this kind of area, right, sorry, I'll backtrack here a bit. In my university, we've got a lot of computer scientists, okay? Fantastic people, but they have to take them out of the lecture space, out of the seminar rooms, in order to give them the team skills, the interpersonal skills, the communication skills. So they do these things, you know, where they kind of go away and they move logs about and form human pyramids and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to do any of that because you're working as part of a team. Any of you that work on a production, you will be part of a team. You know, you will have good communication skills. That's in the nature of acting and drama and performance, so you'll have those skills. You'll have good planning skills. Can I have a quick show of hands here? How many of you have been involved in a production? How many of you have been involved in a production where nothing went wrong? 1. Okay. How many of you were involved in a production that you cancelled? 2, 3, okay? Now you can see, I know it's a bit of a cliche, the show must go on, but actually it's very exceptional that you have to cancel. It is really quite sort of dramatic, when you have to cancel something. And that ability to deliver on time is actually a really valuable skill, to plan your time. You know, I'm performing at Friday at 7:30 in 6 weeks' time. I've got to have a dress rehearsal, I've got to have a technical rehearsal, so you kind of plan. So those planning skills, those interpersonal skills, those communication skills, those team skills are really valuable, not just in the context of working in theatre, film and television, but in working in a whole range of other careers. Okay, am I out of time now? All right, okay, so is there anything else I want to say? No, not really, other than thank you very much. Thank you.